Hello, Houston County. I'm Penny Lynn Webb with CountyLife.tv, and I'm here today with Senator Robert Nichols. How are you today?
I'm just great.
We're so glad you could come by.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to be here.
Senator Nichols is in the area today doing a superintendent's visit. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, one of the things I try to do is go to each of the counties that I represent and visit with the school superintendents in kind of a closed type meeting, and to really let them dig in and tell me what I need to fix. It's not a meeting where I tell them what I know about education. It's obviously they have to deal with things that come from Texas Education Agency, as well as some of the mandates the state puts in. And unless I'm out talking to them, I won't know what we've done that's damaging, that hurts them. And so we ask them ahead of time, please try to think of at least 3 things that I can fix. If you had your choice, what 3 things you want me to focus on in education? And so I found it very helpful.
So this will be your first time doing Houston County, doing your visit with
Yes,
Houston
so I'm
County.
excited. We do this before every session, so you'll be seeing us before every session doing that one thing. So.
Okay. And what are some of the major concerns you're hearing about?
Some of the things I've heard so far, and our superintendent meeting is this afternoon, so here.
Right.
So I haven't heard from them yet, but soon will. A lot has to do with the new testing standards, testing requirements. Not that they mind taking tests and being accountable,
Right.
but the testing is so extreme that we're losing 42 to 45 days
Wow.
of disruption in our schools. And the schools only have about 180 days.
Right.
And so the request I've been hearing so far is we need to tighten that back up, so we can spend more of our days actually educating children instead of just testing them. That's the primary thing. The second thing I think I've heard the most is the ratings, the new test standards, and it's not by legislation but by rule. There's like 30 different subgroups that they're all measured on performance. And the way the rating of a school is determined is not by how well they're doing on all of these, because they could be taking 25 or 28 of these subgroups and just blowing the roof off.
Right.
They're measured by whichever one's the worst.
Right.
So if you had 1 out of 30 that dropped below a certain number while all the rest are improving, to me your school's doing pretty good. They're measured as a failing school.
Right.
And that's got to be corrected.
Well, now, one major topic we're hearing about that's upcoming is transportation, and you've just been recently named the transportation chair, which we're so excited
Well, thank
for
you. I'm pretty excited myself.
And what does that mean for you, and are you excited about that role?
I'm very excited about that role. 15 years ago, when George Bush was governor, he appointed me to the Transportation Commission. And so I sold all my businesses and I worked on it full-time statewide. So I worked all through the rural areas of Texas, the urban area, but I really dug in deep into TxDOT to make sure I understood what each division did, and why they were making the decisions they were, what the problems were, and get a grasp of that. So I have a real deep understanding of the system we have and its connection to the federal and its connection to the local. And so we worked with the legislature for quite a number of years, helping shape some of the policy or requesting they address certain issues.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I first ran for office 6 years ago that I had a chance to be on the other side, where I can actually file bills, write bills, and do some of that work myself and work very closely with the members. And so the members, many of them, particularly the ones that have been there for quite a few years, have known me for 15 years working on transportation. And so I'm very fortunate in that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst recognized the work I did.
Right.
And chose to put me on chair of transportation. I've served on it ever since. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, I think you're the right man for the job.
Well, thanks.
Now, water rights are going to be another big issue that's going to be facing the legislature. Can you tell us what the general consensus is in Austin, and if they have any possible solutions?
Okay. First of all, there is no general consensus. That becomes part of the problem. A simple way to look at it is East Texas has most of the water, and everybody else wants it. The reality is that they really need it, and we have it. And the representation in the legislature is determined by population. That's why we do redistricting every 10 years. So 80% of the people in the state are in those urban areas. And we can get outvoted very easily on this issue. So what we in East Texas have to do is come to grips with how do we want to share this. Because if we do not figure out a way to share some of our water, with us keeping our rights, us keeping our water for the future generations, us keeping our water for economic development, all the things that one of the reasons we love East Texas, we don't watch out, they can take it away from us.
Right, they'll just come in and take it.
So one of the jobs of the rural members is to work out something that's fair to everyone. An example of that was most of the laws related to your rights of ownership. I always just assumed that if I had land, I had the water below the land. Yeah, my water. There was never any statute passed that anybody can find where it says that. And so, with all of this coming up last session, I'm now on the Natural Resources Committee as well, which I wanted to be because that's where the water is. Last session, a bill was filed that says if you own land, you have a vested right to the water below your land. That's a pretty simple bill. And you kind of wonder who would argue against that.
Right.
But Katie barred the door. They were lined up out the door testifying against that. There were so many other people that had plans for your water that if it's your right, they can't make those plans. And so the bill did pass. So there's enough people who believe in private property rights in this state that the bill did pass. I'm sure some court will try to figure out later what vested means.
Right.
But it is a hot issue, and there is not a lot of consensus other than they have to get water, and we've got it, and we've got to figure out something.
We've got to figure out a way to work together.
And particularly after last year's drought. Lake Houston almost was sucking air in the pipe. And there's a lot of other urban areas that know that. So there's going to be a lot of bills filed. I have no idea what they're going to be. And
so that'll be an interesting part of the session.
It's going to be a water session as well.
One of the big things that Houston County has been talking about in local sessions for Commissioners Court and City Council has been the Texas 21 Coalition.
Okay.
And it seems that Houston County would be a viable trade route with 7, 287, 19, and 21 coming right through here, but we're all 2-lane highways. Is there anything that you can do as
well,
sheriff?
I appreciate you bringing that up. I have lived in Cherokee County, your adjacent county, for many years, and I served for 8.5 years as Transportation Commissioner for the state of Texas. So I have worked with the coalition, Texas 21, for many years on numerous projects around the state. As chair of transportation, I don't get to pick the highway projects.
Right.
The TxDOT commissioners are the ones who basically do that. And I am very familiar with how that process works. The good news is for Houston County is that y'all do have these roads, and that Crockett is an intersection of many routes. It goes back to your history in the state of being on the trade routes.
Right.
We cannot, no matter how much the legislature would like, push trucks to go certain ways. Most of the heavy truck traffic is running between the cities, and that's where those interstates are, and that's why those interstates were there. We'll have a very difficult time pulling money out of the urban areas that have so much congestion to come into and create 4-lane corridor routes in Texas. We always strive to do that, but it's very difficult to pull that money to do it. The thing that encourages me that I have not really seen before is when I was Transportation Commissioner, I would come to Crockett and work with the county judge and some of the people here. But y'all are getting excited about transportation now, and timing with my excitement as well. And so I'm looking forward to working with your commissioners, with the chambers, and everybody in the county on doing what we can to improve those roads, which will increase economic development opportunity for Houston County. And it's going to be a struggle between the urban and the rural.
Well, I know one area that County Judge Von Durenhoff mentioned was rail. Rail might be an option, a viable option for us to get in on that process.
Yes.
Is that, or can you
Yes,
expound on
okay.
that, how that would work?
The Panama Canal deepening,
Mhm.
if you want to call that, is going to impact our ports, and it will impact any ports in the northern hemisphere, particularly on the eastern side,
Right.
because of those big ships. They'll be more economical to come here, which will drive things away from California and the West Coast and bring them to the Gulf Coast.
Okay.
Those goods are obviously not all intended to stay in Houston. They've got to move elsewhere. And so rail, most people have not really recognized the significance of rail, but I spent a lot of time working on rail and with the big rail companies on seeing what we can do. And where the real opportunity lies on rail is, thank goodness you have it, because a lot of people lost a lot of rail.
Right.
Y'all have it, you're on one of the good routes. And what the rail companies are looking for are big switching yards. The biggest opportunity I have seen is to get the little bitty inefficient switching areas, yards is what they call them,
Right.
out of the Houston proper and get it out to these rail corridors. And then they can lay out, take a lot of land and lay it out very efficiently. The old rail yards were laid out in the 1870s, 1860s, 1890s, and they're very inefficient. It would remove a lot of inside traffic from there, and then they could bring those goods that come in from the ships to places like Houston County and switch them out on the rail yard and send them along those tracks. Most of that stuff is heading to Mexico or coming from Mexico, or it's going up to the Midwest or the Eastern Seaboard. And you want to be part of it, and the good news is you have rail. You have a good rail.
Well, that is good news.
Yeah, so there is opportunities there.
Well, we're so glad that you could make it by today. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much.
And we hope you'll keep logging on to countylife.tv.